It's the Worth Knowing live stream, and we're on the Cliff's Edge channel on YouTube, my very own Substack, Worth Knowing with Matt Robeson. That's me. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn. And if all of that sounds like a lot of buzzy words flying at you really fast, that's what I want to start off with talking about today. It's become commonplace, almost trite, to say words matter. And as a writer, look, it would be ironic for me to argue otherwise. Clearly, words do matter, whether it's Thomas Paine's pamphlet Common Sense or Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail. The right collection of words at the right time and place can dramatically change what people think and do. But it's also really easy to take it too far. In politics, I see it all the time, especially among Democrats, this fetish that somehow, if we only arrange the right words in the right order, suddenly the scales will fall from the eyes of voters and they'll dramatically fall to their knees and agree with us. My friend and recent guest here on this live stream, the psychologist and pollster Lauren Goldstein, just wrote about this on Substack, about how pollsters like her give messaging guidance that amounts to tiny tweaks to words, showing that one thing outperforms the other by a few percentage points. And the whole thing is sort of an exercise in fussy futility and telling Democrats that you have to stick to exactly this formula. Otherwise, you're screwed. Rather than understanding what voters care about, what you believe in as a candidate, and trying to have a conversation in plain English that makes the two connect. Now, look, I've worked for 4 different members of Congress, and I can tell you they all got obsessed with stuff like this. But nowadays, Democrats are also equally good about obsessing in the other direction and worrying that we're creating too much poll-tested language or liberal elite coded language buzzwords that make us sound inauthentic or like ivory tower latte sipping weirdos from Mars. We're going to talk about that today because it's actually resulted in some of the brightest minds in the Democratic Party coming up with a list of 45 no-no words. You're going to love it. In the midst of all of this, in the past week, California Governor Gavin Newsom has decided that the antidote is to go fully in the other direction. And since we haven't been able to beat Donald Trump by, as Michelle Obama asked us to do, going high when they go low, he's decided to mimic Trump's wording style with all caps social media trolling. It seems to be working. He's getting a ton of attention. He sold like $6 million worth of merch to help his nascent 2028 presidential campaign, and he's provoking Trump into an online flame war. And all of this comes at the exact same moment that the Democratic National Committee is meeting this week to talk about the way forward. The picture is really ugly. Of the 30 states that track voter registration by political party, Democrats lost ground to Republicans in every single one of them between the 2020 and 2024 elections, with a grand total swing of 4.5 million voters toward Republicans. It's happening among young people, people of color, and swing state voters, the very voters that either form the Democratic Party's base or are the central core target of who we need to win. So, how do we think about language, communication, words in 2025 against that picture? How much does it matter? Is Gavin Newsom showing us the road to a pretty dismal future? Like in 2026, is this live stream going to be a series of 30-second interpretive TikTok dances? Because that's the only thing people can deal with anymore. To help tackle all of this, plus everything else going on in politics, I'm delighted to welcome back one of the truly bright minds in the Democratic Party, an outstanding media consultant, a veteran of so many campaigns, an old friend of mine, Valerie Martin. Val.
Friend, good to see you.
It's good to see you. It has been far too long. Wait till people hear all of the marquee races that you've been a part of over a long time now. You haven't aged a day.
Oh,
what's
bless
happened?
you, sir.
No.
Thank you. You're a very good human for saying that. Thank you.
Well, I have to, now that I've sugared you up, I have to ask you one of the most difficult and pressing questions in America today. How do you feel about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift's engagement?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm finding myself needing to be distracted by like books or shows that have nothing to do with reality. And then I'm doing like deep dives into news and politics and everything. And I have like no time for anything in between. So I have no opinion on it, but everybody else in the world should have one. I just feel like, I don't have time for it.
feel the same way. And I'd like to put out my first listener question out
Yeah.
to the chats. I'd like to say hi to everyone in the chats. We're going to scroll through. I try and do, Val hasn't been part of this before, so I try and do this multi-level mind test to stave off my increasing dotage. I try to pay attention, talk, listen, and put up chats all at the same time. Oh, and by the way, hang on, because we have the final appearance for the time being before he goes back to college from our worth knowing intern in a few minutes, he's cooked up a question for you, Val. But I want to pass it out to the chats. Is what Val just said, is that how you feel too? Seriously, do people feel exhausted and veering between hyper engaging in all of this stuff, like doom scrolling it, bring it into my veins, and trying to escape from it at the same time? And I really, really want your opinion on this. Cynthia Rice, Lefty Gramps, MJ, Jim Williams. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at the people that I have come to trust out there because I'm really thinking about launching a new show, and I'm trying to think about the core concept of it. And one of the core concepts is there a way that we can do news without letting Trump marionette us around, right? Like that's without sort of like dancing to his tune. Anyway, so that's a question out there, and I will try and catch up to people's responses. But Val, you are actually a messaging guru. I'm sorry, it's real. It happened to you. I don't know how it happened to you. What do you make of Gavin Newsom's embrace of Trumpian messaging, all caps trolling? Like, is this the future? Is this what we got to do?
You know, I'll say this. I think for Democrats who've lived a steady diet of like shit sandwiches and face punches, right? Like we just feel like we have just been in this hellscape. This is candy and it tastes delicious and we should all enjoy some candy, right? Like we should all just enjoy it, savor it. It's fantastic. I think that it is giving us a little bit of a sugar rush. I don't know that it is actually a long-term solution to the problems that we face both in the Democratic Party and the country. But for now, like let's all just roll around in it and enjoy it and see it for the genius that it is. I mean, kudos to him, to his social media team, because they are like owning the internet right now. And, you know, in an attention economy, that's really important. Like what he's doing, it's very smart. I will also say it is coming at the right time where he is substantively trying to do something really bold, right? By sort of this redistricting tit for tat that we are in. And he is fighting the good fight. It's a fight that makes us all a little bit uncomfortable. Like we're like, yay, terrible gerrymandering. But we as Democrats, I think, you know, are firmly believe that he is doing the right thing by fighting fire with fire, by standing up strongly. So I think he's doing it at the right time. He's got a tough fight on his hands to pass this referendum. And I think, like, again, the sugar rush, it's all coming at a good time for him politically and strategically.
Yeah, I'm of multiple minds of this. And I'll just say for people who were chatting in the midst of Val's intelligent answer there, yeah, the youth of the nation has failed. I'm going to ask our what's knowing intern Nicholas about that and about his failure in a minute. We'll troll him with that. I'm with you, MJ. It's their fault. I'm with you. I am a little mixed on this. I'm in the middle right now over at Newsweek, where I write op-eds, I don't know, about once a week, once every couple of weeks. I'm engaged in a feature that they call the debate. It's me up against this like right winger, and we're talking about alligator Alcatraz. And I am bringing all of my, like best practices, debate practices. You and I have done debate prep for candidates together before, Val. So like, you know what I'm talking about here. And boy, I mean, I'm doing it because there's a form to this, and I'm trying to remain substantive. But man, like I am sympathetic to the argument that in order to communicate with real people, like it's not just about performative cursing. I love cursing. I'm a fan of cursing. Like, let's go for it. And you remember when I'm on a campaign, I'm like a sailor. It's fantastic. I don't think that's all it is, but I just kind of want to plain English this. It's like, come on, man. You don't need to deport fucking 4-year-old American citizens with cancer in order to punish their parents because that's somehow incentivizing people to self-deport. That is some authoritarian asshattery, and we don't have to put up with it. That's fucking un-American. That's what I want to say. But of course, I'm saying something very, very cleaned up for the readers of Newsweek.
Right. Right. Fair enough. I think, and one of the things hopefully we're going to talk about today is style versus substance, and style and substance, because I think that dovetails into something else you brought up in your intro, the sort of like list of no words proposed by Third Way. And I think we can dive into that whenever you're ready. But I think that what Gavin Newsom is doing, and doing well, is sort of marrying the style and substance, in that he is trolling Trump in a way that is driving a lot of eyeballs. It is energizing Democrats. It is, which is a really important thing, again, for a party that we've been eating the shit sandwiches and the face punches for so long, that we need that. We need that energy. We need to feel like we are fighting back. And so this is the stylistic way in which he's doing it. It does mean something to people, right? But substantively, he is also doing something bold. And I think that matters, that it's like,
Yeah,
if he were not doing the redistricting thing, right, and he were just doing the like Twitter trolling, I think it would easily be seen as like just a play for being a presidential candidate.
oh, that's a
Right?
good point.
And instead,
Yeah.
this feels meaningful to people. And it feels like this is how we are trying to hold the line against all this crazy shit that Republicans are doing.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that if it's purely performative, which is essentially, look, everything Donald Trump is doing is so obviously purely performative. Sending social media teams along with the National Guard troops as they patrol the swankiest parts of Washington, D.C. Look, I half grew up in Washington, D.C. I lived there as a young professional for many years. I know where the fuck he's patrolling, okay? It is not in Anacostia.
Yeah.
It is not in, and look, I mean, I actually lived for a while in Anacostia, so like no shade at Anacostia, but like he does not give a shit about the places where the majority of residents are Black. He cares a lot about DuPont Circle, and making a big show. And so, like, obviously, this is all performative. The debate that I'm in with this Newsweek right winger right now, his argument, I'm going to share it with people. I hope, come to my Substack, come to worthknowing.substack.com. I will put it all up there as soon as it comes out. You will see that essentially the argument they're making is, well, what the Democrats have failed to do is give people incentives to scare them out of the country. That's what Trump is getting so right. And it's like, yeah, so what you're arguing is his performance is better, even though Obama lapped him in terms of deportations. If you really gave a shit about deportations, that's the metric you would care about. No. You care about Fox News hits. So don't even try. Don't even try. But look, you brought up the Third Way memo. Linnea Erickson, who is the pollster focus group maven, who is behind it, has been a previous guest on my show. I have a great deal of respect for her. See where she's coming from. I decided not to screenshot, and I'm not going to put in the screenshot. What I'm going to do is something a little different. So I guess our video viewers won't benefit from this. This is the value of being in the chats, being in the live stream, is I'm going to paste this right into the chat right here. This is from Politico's summary of the 45 no words. And let me just give people a little bit of background here. Third Way is a think tank that is associated with what was once the Third Way Democrats, sort of the Bill Clinton-esque, answer to the liberalism of the 1970s and early 80s, kind of, response to trying to recapture the center, everything that went with that. They've got a lot of great policy experts. They've got great messaging guidance. It's not everyone's cup of tea within the Democratic coalition. I get that, but it's worth listening to. They have smart people who have very helpful perspectives. That's all I'll say for them. They have put out a memo in which, in the kindest way possible, they say, don't say these things because it makes you seem like a liberal elitist who is from Mars. And so the things you're not supposed to say: privilege, violence, as in environmental violence, dialoguing, triggering, othering, microaggression. By the way, I live in Amherst, Massachusetts, and they wanted to rename the mascot for Amherst College several years ago because you couldn't do the Lord Jeffs anymore because Lord Jeffrey Amherst actually gave syphilis blankets to Native Americans. So he's bad. He was a bad man. So they wanted to rename the mascot. I suggested the microaggressions because we're minimally threatening. No one took me up on this, and I'm now banned from town. So there you go. All right. So these are the kinds of words. Val, what do you make of this? Is using this kind of language actually entrubulating Democrats?
So I would say a couple of things. I think what I agree, there's a lot of smart people at Third Way. I think what they're doing is very, I would call it clickbaity, right? Like, I mean, this is like interesting. It's something people want to talk about. But how I would look at like the challenges that we have as messengers in the Democratic Party, I would look at it a little differently. First, I think the idea of like a swear jar, essentially, right, is not necessarily terribly beneficial to candidates. I think it kind of falls into, in some ways, the trap that you were mentioning earlier, Matt, where like Trump is this marionette and we just jump and he pulls our strings and pushes our buttons and we just like react and respond. I think this idea that he says we're woke and then we have to run around yelling at the top of our lungs, we're not woke. And like, let me tell you how not woke we are, Donald. We're never going to say the word unhoused again. Like, that'll show you we're not woke. I think that is largely missing the point here and how we need to connect with voters. What I would say and how I often advise clients and the people that I work with is Democrats need to, with the way we talk, we need to be bold. We need to be unafraid, fearless, candid, straightforward, honest. We need to speak in ways that are direct and impactful and that voters can easily understand. Those are rules, whether it was 20 years ago when you and I were prepping a candidate or now, right? Like, you need to speak in a language and in a way in which the people you're talking to understand, full stop. So I think the Democratic Party, we are seen as being overly censored. So it's sort of ironic that there's this list of words that we're not supposed to say. Like, I don't know that.
Hold on, I'm trying to follow that. Wait, I see it now. Oh no.
It kind of feels like, again, we're falling into a little bit of a trap. So I would say, it's about being bold. The other thing is that it's not just about sounding bold. It's about actually being bold. And there's maybe an example that I think that always kind of strikes me as interesting, which is in the presidential campaign, Trump and Harris were both asked a question about childcare. I don't know if anyone remembers, but Trump gave the worst, vomitous, word salad, bullshit, garbage answer that I think he's ever given on anything. It made no sense. It didn't connect at all. I think he referenced tariffs, like while talking about childcare, and like, it was nonsense. Harris, of course, gave a much more like reasoned, thoughtful, responsive, logical, articulate answer on childcare. And yet, neither one of them actually had a plan to address the affordability and accessibility issues of childcare, which is something that like millions of Americans right now are wrestling with every single day, right? And so I think it's like, if we were just comparing language, Harris would have won. But the reality is we didn't really have a plan either. So if you're a voter, what was the difference, right? And so I think that to me it's a good reminder of like why we can't just like give a bold, smart, articulate answer on childcare to understand, meet voters where they are, we have to take it one step further and we have to do something about it. We have to have a plan, have an answer for families that are going, I don't know what to do. I can't find it. I can't afford it. I can't make my household budget work without it. What do I do? Right. And so I think it's we need the, again, going to this idea of like style and substance. We got to have them both right now. So that's where I think the conversation should be going about what Democrats are failing to do on messaging wise.
Right. I think it's not so much, first of all, to MJ's question, they didn't actually call it a list of no words. I'm being cheeky. And I understand where Lene and Third Way are coming from, which is, it's not so much the use of these words, it's the value coding, it's the subtle subtext that you're sending of, I am smarter than you, I am using the correct term and you're not. And Democrats, I do think it matters. Back to my opening screed, like, yeah, words kind of matter from the standpoint of you're imparting a lot more information. That's why podcasting is fucking dying. Narrative podcasting is dead, and podcasting is dying. Wait, you say. Podcasts are alive and well. They're super popular. Democrats are ripping out their hair to get their candidates onto more podcasts. Yeah, video podcasts are doing well. Why? Because there's so much more body language, subtext, context that's communicated in the course of video. And it's the same thing with our word choices. To me, it's not so much about, whether you stray into talking about, I don't know, I'm going to pick a random word here, dead naming. It's not whether you use that term. It's kind of like the overall bearing of, do you come off like an insensitive, insufferable douchebag while you talk? Right. I'll give you an example. I worked for several members of Congress from Maine, Mike Michaud. He is an amazing guy, 28 years, working at a paper mill, never went to college, and a smart guy, just not a college educated guy. And he talked like, guess what? Most Americans talk. So I'm writing a speech for him one day, and I have a line in there saying that we have brought ourselves to the precipice of disaster. And he says to me, Matt, what the fuck is a precipice? I'm like, geez. So I feel bad. I feel like an idiot. I feel stupid in that moment because, it didn't even occur to me, my Harvard educated self, right? Like I seem like such an elitist douche at that moment. So anyway, it's more about that. And the other thing you said is, I think the reason Gavin Newsom is resonating right now is because he's trolling and because he's being transgressive. The reason people respond positively to Trump is they like the transgression. It's like why Nate Bargatze and like these comedians are kind of finding a following, is they're being a little transgressive, and it's a release of tension for people. It's like, okay, it's all right. I get that you're not a bigot. It's fine. So there's something to it. There's something to it. But to me, it's much more not about avoiding the list of no words, but a broader embrace of, we've got problems. I'm going to talk about them in a real way. I'm not going to use $100 words, and I'm not going to bend myself around the axle if, shit, I just dead named someone. I'm sorry. Like, for my trans friends here, like if I fuck up and I call them by their earlier name, instead of their changed name, I apologize. Like, my bad. I'm sorry. And we move on. Cause I don't mean anything bad by it. And I think that's what people are hungry for.
I think that's right. And again, the joke I was making earlier about like, there's a broad view that Democrats have been too censored, right? Like too restrained, too limited. And we're sort of being overly cautious about the words we use. I think we have to let some of that go. And I will say to me and Matt, like when you and I were working on the Hodes campaign together, for example, in 2010, the idea of a gaffe, right, was like a very scary thing, right? There were trackers out there. And if you said something like, if you misspoke, if you said the wrong thing, you were going to pay a price. It was going to end up on a TV ad against you. And you would over and over and over be bombarded with that.
We were 2 years past George Allen's macaca moment, right?
Correct.
Like, it's like, oh my gosh, the boss is going to say something insane. Then
Yes.
what?
And we lived in fear of that gaffe. Those days are over. Nobody cares now, right? Like you can fuck it up. You can say the wrong thing. You can make a mistake. Just fix it. Own it. If you screw it up, like just own it, apologize for it, move on. But we don't live in that world anymore. And I think sometimes Democrats, like we are like too afraid and we've got our hands tied behind our back because we're putting on this filter that's kind of unnecessary, and it's making us feel like we are failing to meet voters where they are. The other piece of this is, voters are mad right now about everything. They're mad, they're worried, they're disgusted. They have a lot of these strong emotions. So if the language that we are using feels clinical, if it feels detached,
Yeah.
if it feels like it is separating us from our audience, that's a huge mistake because we're just, again, not meeting them where they are. So I think it's about speaking with passion and making a strong case. If you're going to use the word precipice, that's okay. That's okay. Like, right. But
Thank
also
you.
you could just use the word edge.
I know. You know what's ironic for me is my wife. This was around the time my wife is very brilliant. And
She
she's a
is very
doctor.
brilliant.
She is
She
very
is.
brilliant. And she's a doctor, and she went to Princeton. Okay. And she was going through her medical residency right about the time that my good friend Mike was giving me a little bit of shade for like, you liberal piece of shit. You like precipice my ass. At that exact moment, my wife has this like turn of phrase, the past tense for her of drink. What's the past tense of drink?
I drank.
I drank.
Okay.
And so if you ask someone, have you drank water? Have you drunk water today?
Yeah, I
So
have
her
drunk
thing is she says drinking
it.
for no reason. Have you drinking water today? And I used to tease her about this. And then in her medical residency, her attending physician actually made a comment after a patient interaction that they had observed, saying, I just love the way you used plain English with this patient in a way that they could understand. And I'm like, I've got a problem. I need to change. I need to change. Hey,
Yeah.
since you invoked the way back machine, you did it. You
I
brought us
started it.
back to one of our former campaigns together.
Yeah.
It is time. I am going to bring on our worth knowing intern. This is siren to you there, Nicholas, because he did a little research on you and he had a question. Frequently, he comes on with a worth knowing nugget, something that's going on in the
Nicholas.
news. But Nicholas here has a question for you about campaigns.
Okay. Hi, Nicholas.
Hello, nice to meet you.
You too.
Okay, for those of you who do not know in the chat, Valerie worked on a 2006 Senate campaign in Missouri where they dethroned the Republican incumbent in a very red state, right? And I just wanted to ask you, what made this win possible? And I mean, even though this was in 2006, it's the campaign as old as I am. I think we might be able to learn some stuff from it still.
Oh boy. Okay. How much time do we have? Should I just spend like 2-3 minutes here? Because
This is an epic race.
it was an epic race. So I worked for Claire McCaskill, who was then the Attorney General of Missouri. She was running against incumbent Jim Talent, Republican. And it was considered to be one of the like firewall states. That was sort of the term du jour in 06 of we were trying to sort of break the Republican wall. And so Sherrod Brown is another Democrat who won that year, for example. But, Claire McCaskill, I would say Claire was a very, very intelligent, former prosecutor, like tough, but also very plain spoken, very Missourian, she was somebody that, could really connect with people. There are a couple things I would say about that race that made her victory possible. First is it was one of the first cycles where, and again, I'm dating myself, Nicholas, because before this, before you were born, we didn't have like internet money machines in the way that we do now. We didn't even have
Or cars or yes, right, exactly.
we had flip phones and Blackberries. So this was one of the first cycles in which online money made a huge difference. And there was a particular moment in the campaign when actually there was a ballot initiative, a ballot referendum in Missouri that same year about stem cell research. And Michael J. Fox, who suffers from Parkinson's disease, did a television ad for Claire McCaskill and talking about her support for this stem cell initiative. He was, because of Parkinson's, he has dyskinesia, so movement, which he can't necessarily control. It's involuntary. Rush Limbaugh, another blast from the past, on a very his conservative talk radio show, said that accused Michael J. Fox of not taking his medication in order to like juice his movements and look more sick. I don't know.
Playing it up.
Oh, horrible,
So
right? It was
Yeah.
absolutely horrible, but it brought national attention to the race. And it was the, MoveOn.org got involved and raised a ton of money for us. Former presidential candidate John Kerry raised a ton of money for us. All of a sudden, we had like $1 million come in online that week. And that was, I know it sounds like sort of dated and trite, but at the time, that was like when the tide really had started to turn, and becoming essentially a viral candidate, having those viral moments all of a sudden could mean a radical change in your budget. So that was like a really kind of interesting moment. The second thing that I will say is Claire's strategy was to not get beat as badly in the rural parts of the state as Democrats normally do. So turn the heck out of the cities, right? So, Kansas City, St. Louis, let's go churn out our Democratic base vote there. But let's go to rural Missouri, let's go to deep red places. And instead of taking 38% of the vote there, let's take 40. Let's take 41. And this idea of not seeding traditionally Republican areas, I think Claire, it was like a very clear part of her strategy. And I think, in retrospect, people would credit that strategy with her win, because that is something I think we all need to still do as Democrats. And we often are guilty of forgetting or overlooking or ignoring parts of the state where it's like, well, those aren't our people. And so this idea of let's marginally improve, like we don't have to win them, but like, let's just not get our clock cleaned by the same amount each time.
Can I ask you a follow-up then?
Yeah.
Because I think, Nicholas, I think it's a brilliant question. I really do, because just to kind of fast forward and connect a dot to today. So here you are, Val, 20 years later, you're consulting to some of the most at-risk, on the margin Democratic candidates around the country. Do you see, well, I guess it's a two-part question. I mean, one is we've just been talking about Gavin Newsom's approach and kind of creating that virality, creating that moment on your own via trolling. Is that what you have to do in today's media environment? You can't wait for Rush Limbaugh to stick his foot in it by accusing one of America's most beloved actors of playing up his deadly illness. You have to kind of make it by lowering yourself into the mud. Is that kind of the dot connection for you, or am I missing it?
I think it's about seizing the moment. As I guess how I would sort of look at this is, I think we live in an attention economy, particularly for candidates. This idea of responding quickly and forcefully, and using the tools that we have, right? Back in the day, it was like we sent an email. That was like kind of it, but now this idea of, you have to jump on 5 different platforms. It's not just like, I want to go on the evening news and talk about this or send an email. It's maybe both of those things and like 5 other platforms. So this idea, this responding quickly and being nimble, and frankly, being able to do a very quick post on, like a super quick tweet, jump on a video, a podcast, right? Matt, to your point, that's longer form, then maybe you're going to talk about something for 30 minutes. And then to do like a short vertical video that you're going to post on Insta to get, you have to be doing all of those things and doing it very quickly. And I think the candidates that can do that are really having a lot of success. It's like finger on the pulse and then just like jumping into it.
Well, let me ask you another follow-up here. And Nicholas, if you've got follow-up questions, I don't want to step on them, so jump in by all means. But what you were talking about before in terms of language, when you're talking about magic words or the lack of magic words, is more kind of what they signify, the message you're sending about who you are and how tuned in you are and how much you kind of get it with someone, and you're not like some closeted ivory tower liberal elitist, whether it's using the past tense drinking or, talking about halalflation like Zoran Mamdani. It's like, you fucking get it, right? Like, that we need free buses. We need city-run grocery stores in New York City. Guess what? None of that stuff makes any economic sense. I can say from my background in economics, it does not matter. Kind of in the same way that the wall never made any sense. The wall never made any sense. It was a signal. It was a message. And you were talking about how Senator McCaskill was able to use the stem cell issue as kind of that signifier of, this, you don't need to know all the policy details. You don't need an Elizabeth Warren 10-point plan to get this here. This is my way of communicating to you in shorthand. This is where I stand. This is what I'm all about. Do you see, Val, as you work with clients around the country and at all levels of campaigns, do you see an issue like this? I'm setting you up, by the way. I'm going to warn you, I'm setting you up. Do you see anything like that emerging for the 2026 cycle right now? Anything that's a wedge, a shorthand, something that Democrats can go to that makes the division crystal clear?
I think a lot of it is going to be put in economic terms for people. So, we mentioned it earlier, childcare, I think is like, it's such a kitchen table issue. We're ignoring it. And that same with the housing affordability crisis, right? And whether or not I use the word unhoused or not, right? To the point we were talking about earlier, this is a problem. And like, it affects like the goal, the dream of home ownership is like vanishing before our very eyes for people like under the age of 35. It's crazy. And
Nicholas, do you expect to own a home before you turn 35 without major help from your parents?
I'm gonna be honest, I haven't thought that far ahead. And I don't think so, but we'll see. Maybe I get lucky.
You're there in New York City in college right now, and you go to an elite college. So if anyone should be able to do this, you're a bright young man at NYU, like you should seemingly. So if you don't have expectations of it, it is disturbing for the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'll also say like an kind of another sort of economic piece, like, right, like we've got like college loans, there's just like a million sort of pressure points, right, on people in their 20s, on young families, people who want to have a family but can't afford it, all the things. I think we have to should probably put those on the forefront of our conversation, even over Medicaid, which I know is going to sound crazy, but the Medicaid cuts that were passed, which are terrifying and awful and dangerous, do not actually go into effect until after the midterms. So we are talking about what to people feels like theoretical cuts. And yes, it's awful. And yes, we should denounce it. So I'm not saying we should never talk about it, but I would say we should prioritize the things that are affecting families and individuals right this very minute, right? It's the things that have already been on their radar for years that neither party has addressed. Now, and obviously the big ugly bill is going to make a lot of things harder for families anyway. And tariffs, I do think we should be talking about tariffs and just how shitty they are for the average human being in this country. But to me, those are like substantive places where we can say, hey, Democrats haven't done enough, Republicans haven't done enough, but here is the plan that we have to bring like some affordability back to regular people's lives.
All right. Here's what we're going to do. First, Nicholas,
May
thank you.
May I do one more question?
Oh, go. Yeah, go.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we all know, a lot has changed since 2006.
Yes.
And there's been this sort of more like a polarization, that's the word, polarization of the parties. And red states are more red and everyone is sort of more focused. And that my question being, do you think a win like this can happen again in a deep red state?
Well, I will say Missouri has changed quite a bit since then, and Claire McCaskill did a brilliant job defending her seat in 2012 when that tide was already, kind of well on its way. And she did all the brilliant things to hold on to that seat. Can it turn, could we turn Missouri blue today or this cycle? Probably not. But are there places like Texas, right? Look at all the progress we've made in a state like Georgia, where 20 years ago, that seemed really, really hard, right? It seemed like an uphill battle. So I think there are places where we can start moving things in the right direction and where we can start to turn that tide. And I think we honestly need to do it with that sort of Claire McCaskill model. And I'll tell you, Josh Shapiro is someone who I think does a really good job of this in Pennsylvania. He goes to rural, deep red places and will talk with a hunting club, right? With, and just have a conversation. He will engage with farmers. He will have these conversations. He's known for sort of going all around the state to talk to anyone who will have a conversation with him. And so there's other people out there doing it. And I think we all should be doing more of it. The other thing I'll say is neither Republicans nor Democrats have cracked the code with Latino voters. And so I think, Texas is a good example of a place where if we could do a lot better or even marginally better, we would have a chance of winning Texas. But there's things we have not cracked the code on, and we have a lot more work to do before we are earning their vote in the numbers we need to.
All right. Well, I will give the programming note that Nicholas does need to start classes again. So his time to mess around with us on live streams is drawing to a close. Although I've tried to inveigle him into making occasional, class time permitting, guest appearances. But I will say here publicly, thank you for all of your help and support over this summer, which has truly been helpful to me. And our good friend Cliff Schechter literally texted me 2 weeks ago to say, wait, bringing the intern on in the middle of your live stream, brilliant. People want to actually talk to real people and young voters, and you've got one. Incredible. We captured you. I feel like the crocodile hunter. So best of luck back in your classes. You and I'll talk offline. And
thank you very much for having me. It was nice to meet you.
Thanks for being on.
Nicholas, thank you for the thoughtful and interesting questions. Really appreciate it.
So Valerie, now I need to say to you, oh, hold on. I booted the wrong person. Now I need to say to you, I have you now, because in the chats, people are questioning where you're going with this idea of, wait, maybe we don't focus on the Medicaid cuts. Maybe we talk about some of the more immediate items. I've got some comments here. It's who was it? Cynthia Rice. People can only see the now and not the damage ahead of us. So let me ask you in that context about this. This is, I believe, not an ad that you did. This is fresh, hot off the presses this morning in the Virginia governor's race. Okay. The first ad that I've seen that's part of this cycle coming up in the next couple of months in a major ad that's going directly from a Democrat, a marquee race right at the one big, beautiful pile of crap. Let's watch it.
Yeah.
Spanberger, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad.
MAGA Republican Winsome Earl Sears.
I am speaking!
What does she say about Trump's bad budget bill?
The bill, as you know now, does so many great things.
What? The Trump budget raises healthcare costs, raises mortgages, raises the price of electricity and gas. You pay more, so billionaires can pay less.
I am speaking!
We've heard enough. Winsome Earl Sears is so far right, she's wrong for Virginia.
So what do you think? Is that focusing sufficiently on the here and now? I don't want to put you in a position to criticize a fellow ad maker for the Democratic Party, but what do you think directionally?
So let me take up maybe a step back and say, to kind of address the question that was raised. It's not that we can't see the damage that is coming down the pike. And I also think talking about the Medicare cuts, I think it speaks to values. And I think that's important, right? So the idea that Republicans put billionaires and big corporations ahead of like poor kids, hungry kids, and people who need healthcare is bullshit. And we should call that out. And we should make the case in very forceful terms that these guys are assholes for what they're doing. And this is not like, these are not the values that we have. So, but again, the idea that like these cuts that they referenced in the ad, some of those things haven't happened yet. And so I think sometimes when it looks good in a poll, right? When we say, well, what if, how do you feel if your healthcare costs you $2,500 more a year? Like, I'd be mad. But I think the idea that we should also be thinking about addressing the here and now and not just paying it lip service. Right? Not just saying like the child care crisis is bad, but saying, here's what we would do about it, right? Like Ro Khanna has a bill. We can cap child care costs at $10 a day per kid nationally. What if we were to do something that bold, that interesting, that powerful, that tangible for people to say, instead of just blaming the other side for more costs, some of which haven't hit yet, so I don't feel them in my pocketbook, what about addressing something that I am worried about right now, today? Something that I have been stressed about for years. So that's sort of my point. And I think, again, the big ugly bill speaks to values, and that's powerful, but we should not overlook and only think in terms of like the repercussions down the road. I think there's a lot Democrats are missing the boat on here and now. And
what do you think the biggest opportunities are? And while we talk about this, I'm going to pump up some polling on the screen. This is why you got to watch on video, folks. I know some people are listening on audio later. So if you're on Spotify, if you're in the podcast, click on the video. If you're in Apple Pods, can't help you. They for some reason they're really dedicated to the audio model. So here's some recent polling. This is courtesy of G. Elliott Morris, who is now exclusively on Substack competing with me instead of over at The Economist or 538 where he belongs. Thank you for coming over, all of you legacy media folks, and competing with me on Substack. I really fucking appreciate it. Anyway, so here are some numbers. Where do you think the opportunities are for Dems?
Wait, and I'm sorry, this is these are approval numbers.
These are sorry, I should have said Trump is underwater.
Okay.
So this is approval versus disapproval on Trump on a set of issues. The only issue where he's above water right now is border security. Now, granted, this is somewhat like all the caveats that go with polling, and you were speaking to some of this a moment ago. They apply here. Okay, they totally apply here. So, for example, they pulled apart immigration and border security, right? That can have an effect. There's all kinds of wording questions. You take this with a giant hunk of salt, but just to be illustrative, does anything here speak to you, or do you want to go off menu? Where do you think the opportunities are that Dems might be missing?
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it a ton, but the tariff piece, because the very bottom number, right, where there's the widest disparity between his disapprove and approve, is on prices and inflation. And to me, that means tariffs. I want to be clear. I think people get this idea that tariffs are taxes, and this sort of nobody, not even the White House, can properly explain what the heck these tariffs are supposed to be doing, right? Like it's too chaotic. It's too crazy. But you have companies coming out, right? And like Walmart and saying like, I'm going to have to start raising prices. And we've had a little bit of a buffer, but this is going to start hitting, I think, in a much more meaningful and impactful way. So this idea of like, bunch of people voted for him because they thought he was going to tackle inflation, and now he's doing all this shit that is increasing inflation. And so he's making shit more expensive, and we should absolutely be hitting him on this all day long. And again, I think that gets to the here and now. They have, and MJ, to your point, the prices are up already, but I think it pretty limited to what we're going to see in the coming months if these tariffs remain in effect. I think we're just beginning to get, Cynthia.
Right. Christmas is going to be rough.
Christmas.
Right. And for people who are listening later, I've switched the view here. This is Navigator polling showing that Trump's tariffs, even though they've recovered a teeny tiny bit from the absolute disaster crater that they were in post Liberation Day, they're still deeply unpopular. Including among non-MAGA Republicans. So, that does seem to be a wedge in here. And let me ask you another one here. What do you make of, and again, this is one set of polls, and I could go on and I've written about this many times in the past, some of my pessimism about polling. I think it is so easily misused. And, as I cited at the top of the show, like my friend Lauren was talking about, as a pollster, she doesn't like the way pollsters do polls herself. She doesn't like the way we use them in politics. We tend to kind of obsess about the question of like, well, word it this way. And we do I post this stuff myself. I can't help it, right? Like you do 5 points better with swing voters if you say it with this word, but not with this word. And, you're sort of missing the forest for the trees. But what do you make of the fact, all caveats understood, that according to G. Elliott Morris, right now, his polling firm's generic ballot shows Democrats up 8 points. This is a number. Now, the Real Clear Politics average is 4. 4 is a robust number. 4 is you are above the level that would even surpass the Republican gerrymandering in Texas level. Even if they pull it off in Indiana, you're probably coming out ahead in 2026, unless, of course, Trump sends the National Guard into key swing state cities and, arrests everyone. 8 points is massive. It's funny, in his own write-up, he's like, it's a modest advantage. To me, if I saw a generic ballot of 8 points in a district where you and I were working, for example, I'd be like, fuck yes. So what do you make of this?
I have all sorts of thoughts. Let me start with, I think that, midterms are often a referendum on, right, the party in power, particularly like they've got the trifecta. So there's historically, this kind of data would make sense, right? I think where I am nervous and is that Democrats have to be a viable alternative. And I think that is where we are lacking. And so I think we need to do more to sort of make sure that 8 points is like a solid 8 points, and that we have a vision, we have the values, we have the tactics and messages and everything we need in order to show that we can do a better job. Not just that voters are pissed at these assholes in power and we want to like show how mad, right, voters are and sort of like not vote for their guys. I think it's like so to me, I feel like that 8 points is pretty soft right now because of the how voters are viewing the Democratic Party as a viable alternative. We have a lot more work to do on our own party brand in order to get in a better position to show some real strength. I think, there was a sort of debate earlier this year. You probably remember, I think it was Carville wrote an op-ed saying, like, give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves. And it was like this very hands-off, very like, they'll screw this up on their own. We just have to sit back and watch, pop some popcorn and enjoy the show. And that is, I think, demonstrably the wrong approach. And I think most of the Democratic Party has sort of like caught up on that. Maybe not all party leadership in Washington, to be honest, but I think that this idea of like, we have to do more, be more, we have to ask more of ourselves and show voters that we are capable and deserving of leadership right now. So,
right. I think the formula to me, that resonates for me. I agree that the number's soft. And I am where I agree with Carville is that we're not going to fundamentally be rebranded. Fucking buzzwords. Gosh, I can't stand it. We're not going to rebrand the party until we settle on a nominee. I fundamentally don't believe that voters are going to see us all fired different until there's an avatar of the party that defines what we're about. Much as we saw with Bill Clinton, we talked about third way Democrats back in the late 80s and early 90s. Once we settled on Bill Clinton as a nominee, it reframed the view of the party. Once we settled on Barack Obama as a nominee, it reframed the view of the party. We're not going to get out from under that kind of whatever cloud of mismatch unless we have a central figure to kind of rally around. Now, our friend and someone that a lot of people in the chats follow, Cliff Schechter, has been writing up a series on Substack that I can strongly recommend, where he says he basically agrees with that point and says, well, Sherrod Brown should be the avatar of the party. We should just kind of, here is sort of a blueprint for what Democrats can and should be and sound like and talk like and be like. I agree with him. I think it's awfully tough, though. It's not the same thing as a presidential nominee. But all that said, I don't think we can wait around for that either. Late 2027, early 2028 is a long way away. Yeah. So it's a little bit of both. It is a little bit of both. Like, we've got to find a way over the next year plus to run and differentiate ourselves. We can't just sit back and pop the popcorn, as you say. Yeah. And I think it's a two-part thing. It doesn't all have to be Mamdani's halalflation. It does have to be clear ways of signaling to voters what we're focused on and that we get it. And we've got to have, this is something that I happen to agree with. Rui Teixeira wrote this up on his blog, the Liberal Patriot, on Substack earlier this week. He was talking about, back to the early 1990s, the Sister Soldier moment. You're probably not even, I'm older than you are, Val. You remember Sister Soldier?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, for sure.
And much in the same way that you were talking about your campaign, Claire McCaskill, finding a moment to go after a target and say, fuck no to this, to Rush Limbaugh, having a moment for Democrats to say, well, hold on, and to strike back a little bit to define ourselves. Not that we have to go to war within our own party against the progressives who are part of our movement, right? It's not like I'm calling for a civil war, but having a definition where it's like, we're not going to crush someone for being unwoke. We're going to be we're going to set a tone of being a little bit more permissive, transgressive, and welcoming. I think that kind of thing would help to reset the tone in my mind.
Yeah. I think also, look, the big unknown factor that, and I think very, very wisely, we were talking about how the presidential nominee is going to reset the brand of the party, for sure. But not only is there going to be a very competitive, very wide open, very diverse field of Democrats vying for that nomination in a couple years, there's a whole lot of very diverse and interesting candidates right now running in Democratic primaries across the country. And that is the first test. And I think that when we talk about how we're going to contrast with Republicans, well, first, we got to choose the kind of Democrats that are going to go take on these Republicans. And what we're seeing in these primaries, it's very interesting. I mean, I live in Chicago. I've got a handful of congressional races here. There are like...
Shelter in place, Val.
Oh my God.
The feds are coming.
It is bananas. Illinois has never seen like this many candidates running for Congress at the same time. It's wild.
Oh, I'm at the National Guard. They're about to be deployed to your street court. Look, I'm sorry. I doxed you to Stephen Miller last week. Was that bad? I probably shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking.
But these candidates are look, the party hates primaries, but they're good. They're healthy. We need them. We need Democrats to have this conversation among ourselves of like what kind of leadership we want. I actually do think that's important, right? It's not, it's something we have to sort out for ourselves in many ways. And that's what we're doing. And I think then we're going to be able, like these midterms are, look, there's going to be a variety of candidates that come out of these primaries for sure. It's going to vary from state to state, district to district, but it is going to be telling, I think, in a lot of ways, right, about the people that we nominate and the kind of values and leadership that they bring. And I will say, I don't think every Democrat needs to be Zoran Mamdani in terms of their policy positions. Far from it. But I think the way that his essentially whole persona was listening, engaging, and being clever and creative about how he messaged and communicated and using social media. That is where we ought to be tactically, right? And so anyway, so I think we have a big tent in this party. I think there's room for a lot of values and ideas, but voters who are also very, like, Democratic voters, as you know, are not happy with our own party, right? Like they are frustrated. So let's see what they think about what the right direction to go in here is. And I think that's an interesting thing. I think we should not be afraid of primaries in the way that mostly our party is.
I mean, per Karen Klein's comment right here, it's basically what you're saying, right? We can't simply say Trump is bad over and over again. I think voters have at this point priced in the fact that, I mean, my Republican friends, I still have some, it's really, really weird. My Republican friends will say, like, these tend to be anti-Trump Republicans, right? And they'll say, well, they then have friends with, they're friends with pro-Trump Republicans. Like, they'll talk to their Republican brethren kind of behind closed doors in like whatever spooky castle they meet in. And they'll say, don't you get that this guy is like a con man and a liar and grifter and terrible and, sexual assault, all that. And they'll say, yeah, we know. But
yes,
but it's kind of priced in. And so, look, it kind of goes back to the point you were making earlier that we're facing a certain amount of exhaustion among Democrats. Yes. And it's partly because we have to react to. Donald Trump sends in the National Guard to Washington, D.C., and it's what I was calling the Princess Bride dilemma, right? Clearly, we can't choose the wine in front of you and not react. Clearly, we can't choose the wine in front of me and go apeshit over it, because then we're drinking iocane powder. It's terrible. And so what we have to try somehow to do is to take advantage of the opportunities we have. Tariffs, deeply unpopular, right? The views on the economy, Trump way underwater. I get what people are saying in the chats. I agree with you that Trump is always underwater, but the points that people are also making, things like, the prices at Aldi, prices for groceries, all of that is very real. Like, this is, for once, Democrats not in the position of saying to voters, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? We actually have people's lived experience on our side here. And so what you're suggesting to me is we need to find a way in plain English to communicate to voters. We get it. We're talking the same language. This is what we care about. And because we know that Trump is going to come at us with, yeah, but they're wild-eyed radical gay witches for abortion. We just need to find, we don't need to answer every single thing they say. We just need to find ways of signaling in very clear ways. No, that's fine. And let's get back to the issue.
Yeah. And I think it's about playing offense, but not just against Trump, right? Like, let's play offense. Like, let's get voters to see that we are actually trying, that we are the party of regular people, right? Like, we've lost a lot of that. The party of unions, the party of working people, the party of that's going to help you live your middle class dream, right? Realize the American dream. Those, I think we've like lost a lot of that connection with people. And I think that's a really big mistake. We have to go forge those relationships. We have to go fight on some substance instead of just saying the other guy is bad, the other guy is an idiot, the other guy's an asshole. We have to do better than that. But he is all of those things. And
so I think that's a perfect segue, because we have to start to wind down, because you have to prepare for being on some kind of a military lockdown. I hear that that's unpleasant.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't live in Washington,
soup
D.C.
and some,
Yeah. I would definitely stock up, but don't go to Aldi, because apparently you do better at Big Y. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to do a little shout out to you. First of all, MJ says you're gorgeous. So there's a vote of confidence. In addition to you being very, very brilliant, people can find your work at Silversmith Strategies.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
which is, and you know what we'll do is, before we get ourselves out of here, because I played an ad from another ad maker, I picked one at random for you. We're going to play one of your ads. Yeah, I'm just gonna pop this up, and you can say a word or two about it.
Okay.
So people can see you don't even know what's coming.
I have no idea. I'm excited.
If this is the shittiest ad you ever made and you're ashamed of it, then we'll move on. Here we go.
Out here, I've learned accomplishment means hitting milestones and then going further. It's why I fought for record infrastructure investments here in Arizona. New funding to crack down on drugs coming across our border. Introduced a plan to protect our water supply. And after decades, secured Medicare's ability to negotiate lower drug prices. I'm Greg Stanton, and I approve this message because we still got a lot more ground to cover.
All right. I don't know if I picked a good one in your mind, but give me the 10-second thumbnail on what you were going for there.
Yeah, I think this idea that Greg Stanton has accomplished a lot. He was a mayor before he was a member of Congress. There are like some really important issues that aren't maybe necessarily like national issues. Notice we weren't talking right in explicitly big or partisan terms about sort of Democrat versus Republican issues. We were talking about things that are very relevant to the voters of his district. Also showing a lot of energy and momentum, and this idea that, come a long way, but he's got the energy and the willingness to keep going the extra mile to get things done for people.
And it never says anywhere that he's a Democrat.
Yeah. You know what? And again, I think, this ad, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember a couple cycles ago, but, Arizona is in a place where there's a lot of independent voters, and this is less about setting up a partisan framework and more about what kind of shit you're getting done for the good people of your district.
All right. So people out there, we're always urging you, get up, run for something. Like Amanda Littman, our recent guest, says, run for something. If you're looking for some help, here's your gal. Right here, Val Martin. And you can find more of her work. If you're into watching these kinds of things, like a political nutcase, you can find more of her work at silversmithstrategies.com. I am, of course, still Matt Robeson, and you can find more of my work, including for people who are struggling with YouTube ads. I put this in the chat. I'm not just running an ad for myself here, but I do encourage you, subscribe. You could be for free. That's okay. I love paid subscribers. Helps me a lot, but it could be for free, and subscribe to worthknowing.substack.com. And you can watch this for the time being ad free, although Substack may be changing that in the months ahead. All right. I agree with the Cynthia Rice. Got to thank all the chatters for being here today. Big thanks to Val Martin. And on that, we are going to get out of here. Thank you. Stay safe. Be well. We will see you next week.
Thanks, Matt.